I'm just an ordinary guy in my late 30s with a regular office job. My wife Hyejin and I had been inseparable for 7 years, and we'd been married for over two. We dreamed of building a stable life and even planning to have a child. At first, everything seemed to be going smoothly, or at least, that's what I believed. On our second anniversary, after work when we'd share a drink, I'd imagine what it might be like to become a dad. Then one day, a video I stumbled upon on her phone shattered my world. It all started with small changes. One day, I noticed that Hyejin's behavior had begun to shift subtly. She was checking her phone more often and started going out more frequently. One evening, while I was sitting on the couch watching TV, I asked, "Who have you been texting so much these days?" She paused for a moment before quickly locking her screen. "Oh, it's just that her friend's been having a rough time, so I've been comforting her," she explained, her voice trembling slightly. I just laughed it off, not suspecting anything was wrong. Another evening, as she was getting ready to head out, I jokingly remarked, "You sure have been out a lot lately." Hyejin sighed as she grabbed her bag. "Gee, hi, my friend is really struggling right now. I'm just gonna stick with her for a while. Please understand." I smiled and teased, "I'd probably be jealous if you went out every day," but her face hardened. "Why do you always have to pry? Do you not trust me?" she snapped. I stammered, "No, it's just a joke." Yet from that moment, a nagging doubt began to take root. One night, Hyejin came home late again. I was awakened by the faint sound of the front door opening. She carefully took off her shoes and slipped into the bedroom. In a low voice, I asked, "Where have you been?" She set her bag down and said, "The company dinner ran late, but she avoided meeting my eyes." My heart sank. "At least call if you're going to be late," I urged. With a dismissive gesture, she unhooked her earrings and retorted, "Do I really have to report every move to you? Are you that distrustful?" I swallowed hard, and although I let it pass that night, her late-night outings only grew more frequent. Whenever I asked, she always said it was work or a friend's get-together. The warm smiles and loving glances I once knew were gradually disappearing. One lonely night, while I sat alone listening to the hum of the TV, a deep unease welled up inside me. I couldn't shake the thought, could it be? Eventually, I did something I never should have. While Hyejin was taking a shower, I secretly grabbed her phone and retreated to my study. I closed the door, my hands trembling as I tried to steady my breathing. Once I unlocked it, a flood of messages immediately caught my eye. The sender was someone named Xiangjun, the very junior coworker she'd mentioned. The messages had been exchanged for weeks and were anything but work-related. "Tonight was amazing," one read. "Be careful, don't let your husband find out." My hands almost dropped the phone as I scrolled further. "I wish I could kiss you again before you go home," another message said. "Let's meet again this weekend." But that wasn't all. Something compelled me to tap into her photo album. In that moment, I couldn't breathe. The album was filled with pictures of them together, snapped in a dimly lit hotel room, where they were laughing and embracing, even nude photos of Hyejin and a video of them being intimate. The woman in that video was not the Hyejin I thought I knew. My hands shook as I pressed play, and what unfolded on the screen stole my breath away. The video showed a shaky view of a hotel room bed, a thin, rumpled sheet lying askew as the two of them tangled passionately. Under the dim light, her naked body appeared, glistening with sweat. The man's hand gripped her waist tightly, pulling her close while she panted and moaned softly. Their rough breaths filled the room through the speakers, sending shivers down my spine. She closed her eyes, her lips parting in surrender as she lost herself in pleasure. No matter how many times I replayed it, the reality remained unchanged. My hands trembled so much I felt frozen, my vision blurred as every ounce of strength drained away. My heart pounded as if it might burst, and a surge of hot tears threatened to spill. Is this for real? Not only did she do this, but she even recorded it. My mind went completely blank. The betrayal, anger, and overwhelming shame hit me like a sledgehammer. Years of trust crumbled into dust in mere seconds. I couldn't erase the image of Heejin's face lost in ecstasy burning into my memory. I don't know how long I sat there in a daze. The study was dark, and I could still faintly hear their labored breaths coming from the phone screen. I kept repeating to myself, I was such an idiot, everything I suspected was true. The images of Hyejin entangled with the stranger in a torrid, sweat-soaked embrace played over and over in my mind. Each breath tore at my heart. Then I heard the study door open. Hyejin had entered, towel drying her hair, and asked, Honey, have you seen my phone? She froze as she caught sight of me. In an instant, her face turned pale. With trembling hands, I held up the phone and demanded, What is this? The explicit video was still playing, the sound of their rough breaths and laughter filling the room. For a moment, she just stood there, eyes wide in shock. What is this? She stuttered. I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. These photos, this video, what did you do with that man? Her face drained of color as she tried to speak, but no words came. I exploded. How could you lie to me for months and do this in a hotel? You recorded it and then acted like I should be the one questioning you. Are you out of your mind? Do you really think this is a joke? My voice cracked with suppressed tears as I demanded answers. Finally, Heejin bowed her head and began to cry, falling to her knees. I'm so sorry, I never meant for this to happen. I was lonely and I just lost myself for a moment. Please, can you forgive me just this once? Just once? I scoffed bitterly. Do you really think that a single mistake can undo months of deception and this disgusting act captured on video? You think saying sorry now will fix everything? Desperation led her to cling to my arm. Please, can't we start over? I promise I'll do better. We could go to counseling. Maybe we can be happy again. But my heart was already broken beyond repair. Shaking her off, I said firmly, You have to face the consequences of your choices. Let's end this right now. The next morning, I went straight to the lawyer's office. My heart had grown cold. Thanks to our prenuptial agreement and the evidence of your affair, the house stayed in my name, and the divorce was finalized quickly. Financially, I wasn't hurt much, but the emotional scars ran deep. When I returned home, I was met by an empty sofa and bed, remnants of the life we once shared. Even then, Hyejin refused to let go. She called, showed up at my door, and pleaded through tears, Please give me one more chance. Though the sound of her sobbing tugged at my heart, I refused to open the door. Friends and family tried to persuade me, saying, Hyejin really regrets what she did, but every word only deepened my anger and sense of powerlessness. The first few months after were hellish. Night after night, memories of her haunted me, robbing me of sleep. Even at work, I found it impossible to focus. Eventually, however, I realized I didn't have to cling to the past. I began seeing a counselor. It was awkward at first, but as I finally poured out the pain inside, I started to breathe again. My therapist explained, the wound of betrayal isn't just sorrow, it shatters your trust and leaves you emotionally adrift. But in time, you'll heal. As the months went by, my heart grew lighter. I thought of her less often, and when I did, the pain wasn't as raw. It was finally over. 3 years later, while grocery shopping one day, I recognized a familiar face, Hyejin's parents. My body froze. I tried to avoid them, but our eyes met. Tae-yoon? Hyejin's mother called softly. Her eyes reddened as she grasped my arm. Long time no see. How have you been? I replied shortly. I'm getting by. After a hesitant pause, she said in a trembling voice, Hyejin was in a car accident. She's in the hospital and her condition is serious. Could you please come by just this once? For a moment, my heart felt like it stopped, but strangely, I wasn't overcome with sadness. I just felt conflicted. I'm sorry, but Hyejin and I are no longer together, I said firmly. Her face fell. But could you at least see her one last time? She really regrets everything. I shook my head. I'm sorry. I don't want to be tied to a past that's already over. And with that, I walked away. In the days that followed, the memory of that encounter lingered. Sitting alone on my couch, I kept hearing that trembling voice in my head, Hyejin isn't doing well. Those words weighed heavily on me. I tried to steel myself, reminding myself that it was over and I didn't want to be pulled back in, but the echo of her pain continued to haunt me. Then, a few days later, my father called. His tone was edged with irritation. Tae-yoon, did you really have to be so cold with Hyejin's parents? He asked. I took a deep breath and replied, Dad, think about what Hyejin did to me. Why should I care about someone I'm no longer involved with? My father's voice softened as he said, I know she did wrong, but she was always so kind to our family. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. Hearing that felt like a fresh stab of betrayal. She who deceived me was still the warm daughter-in-law to them. I responded firmly, a mistake? Dad, having an affair for months wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. Being nice to your family doesn't excuse betraying me. Then he sighed. When I was your age, I had my own affairs. We all do it when we're young. Hyejin just slipped up for a moment. Hearing him defend her by comparing it to his past made my blood boil. I managed to say, Dad, do you know how hard it was for me and my sister when you had your affairs? Those wounds still hurt me. Hyejin's infidelity isn't something you can just brush off. My voice trembled slightly as I concluded, I stand by my decision and I wish you'd respect that. After a long pause, he finally said, all right, if that's how you feel, and hung up. Even after the call ended, my heart felt heavy with loneliness and anger, but soon I realized that my life was mine alone, and no one could chain me to the past. Then one night, the phone rang. My heart sank as I saw Hyejin's number. After hesitating several times, I answered, What's going on? Tae-yoon. Her voice was weak and hoarse. I'm really sorry, I just need to see you one last time. Please, I replied coldly, there's nothing to see. It's over. Just as I was about to hang up, she managed to choke out, I'm in a lot of pain, they say I don't have much time left. Her words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake them. Her voice, stripped of its old vibrancy, pierced my heart. I was confused, wondering if this really was the last time. I agonized over the decision for days, sleepless nights at home, and distracted, empty stares at work as I wrestled with the thought, should I go? Why should I? Finally, I decided that I'd see her one last time and then put everything to rest. I got into my car, not even sure where I was headed, and before I knew it, I found myself parked in front of a hospital. My hands gripped the wheel tightly as my mind spun, why am I here? After a long moment, I stepped out and walked into the hospital. Outside the patient room, I took a deep breath. I slowly opened the door and saw Hyejin lying there under the dim hospital lights. The vibrant woman I once knew was gone, replaced by a gaunt figure with lifeless eyes. When our eyes met, she blinked in surprise, and soon tears welled in her eyes. I'm really glad you came, she whispered. I sat down slowly, not knowing what to say. In a trembling voice, she began, I'm so sorry. I now realize just how foolish I was. I never thought about the pain I would cause you. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them again and said, "You hurt me more than words can express, but I don't hate you anymore. I'll never forget what happened, but I've finally come to terms with it." Seeing Hyejin lying there, I realized she was paying for what she'd done. It felt as if the world was administering its own retribution, even if I hadn't planned for it, and I didn't want to waste my life hating her any longer. Tears streamed down her face as she quietly nodded. "I'm sorry and thank you. I'm grateful I could see you one last time. I truly sought your forgiveness. Thank you. I will regret this for the rest of my life." I said no more. I stood up and quietly walked to the door. Before leaving, I turned back and said, "Take care, and I hope you never have to suffer like this again." With those final words, I stepped out. Standing in the hospital corridor, I took a deep breath. Although one side of my heart still ached, my steps felt surprisingly light. I finally felt like I was free from the past. A few months later, my father called with news about Hyejin. He said she was beginning to recover dramatically. Hyejin's parents even told him that ever since they met me, her condition had improved, and they now regarded me almost as a benefactor. The news stirred conflicting emotions in me. On one hand, I was relieved. On the other, I couldn't help but think that if her wrongdoing had gone unnoticed, I might have carried even deeper scars for the rest of my life. I drew a clear line for myself. I firmly asked her parents never to contact me again about Hyejin, and I even changed my phone number. I wanted to start over for real. Thank you for listening.